She wed the cold, reclusive duke to escape her abusive family.
You look beautiful.
To Wed a Duke, a Regency romance by Lysa Shimkus. Part 1. I offer you a home, protection, and a title in return for an heir. Yet I cannot give you love and companionship. The words of Lord Kensington rang in Cassandra Fairfax's ears as she did the washing alongside two maids. The hot water scalded her chapped red hands, yet the touch was welcomed in the cold bathhouse on this October day in Surrey. Her breath caught in the air as Cassandra dunked her hands back into the wash basin, and the maids tucked their chins into their threadbare shawls, their knuckles pink and chapped from the cold as well. As the women worked, none spoke, for who was there to listen to them? Cassandra was the middle child of an earl, born after a beautiful and talented sister but preceding the family heir a son. From a young age, Cassandra, who was rather plain, knew she was an unwanted child. Being forced to care for the family home as if she were a mere servant only reinforced this knowledge. The other girls came from less privileged families, yet Cassandra had a hunch that should friends or neighbors inquire on their whereabouts, the response would be they're working. The answer, when guests would inquire after Cassandra, was, "Oh, that girl, she can never stay put. She is never home." In truth, Cassandra was traipsing the servant stairs or behind the servant doors, tending to the family estate. Before the weather took a turn, Cassandra had been hurried into her room, a tiny space in the attic, by the housekeeper, a plump older woman with a cheerful face. Confused yet cooperative, Cassandra had allowed the other woman to change her into a yellow dress, a hand-me-down from her older sister. As with all of her sister's dresses, the neckline exposed too much skin and the full attire needed to be cinched around her torso. "Do not fear, my lady, for there's nothing a pin and shawl can't hide," the housekeeper had said. "We'll have you looking prim and proper in no time." The Duke of Crestwood, it so happened, had come to call upon her. Cassandra knew not why. She'd never met him before. In her small world, Lord Kensington was a complete stranger. Yet the servants whispered about him, as gossip always spread around the house. The Duke was said to be cold, careless, and arrogant. He was also a recluse, hidden away on his family estate in Kent, for no one in London high society could stand the man. "He has been here on several occasions," a maid once whispered. "Can't imagine why." "The master has gambling debts, and he needs them cleared," responded another. "The Duke is also in need of a wife," whispered a third. "He's never married." Indeed, all were true. At that time Cassandra had assumed her father and Lord Kensington made business arrangements. Little did she realize she was part of the deal. Her conversation with the Duke had lasted only 10 minutes, with the gentleman stating he was in need of an heir, and the Earl had a daughter of marriageable age. Lord Kensington was tall, broad-shouldered, and he carried himself with an air of authority alongside a cane. He also had sharp blue eyes that flicked over her as if she were a mere ledger to balance. Such eyes were not warm yet not cruel either. Just tired. "I offer you a home, protection, and a title in return for an heir," he had said, his eyes now diverted to the window. "Yet I cannot give you love and companionship." Cassandra had been left speechless. At the age of 21, having never attended a season, she had considered herself a spinster. The young woman never thought a suitor would come calling. Because of this, she never considered what she wanted in a husband. Her eyes had darted about as Cassandra took in the Duke's words. He had not professed words of love nor asked for her hand in marriage. He had simply bestowed a marital contract that he had already drawn up, and she was expected to sign it. Her eyes had landed on the door, the only divide between Cassandra, the Duke, and her parents' listening ears. Heat had risen to her face, and her chest had tightened, as Cassandra realized what this marriage could mean to her. She would be liberated from this house and from the never-ending lists of chores from her parents. Her life of secret servitude would be no more. "I accept your terms on one condition," Cassandra told the Duke. Lord Kensington's jaw had tightened under his dark mustache, and his piercing eyes finally met hers. "Name your condition," he said. His voice was sharp, but his face was motionless. "After we marry, I am never to return to this house. You may conduct business as usual with my father, and you may visit when passing through. however you shall leave me behind at Crestwood, your family home." Cassandra spoke with pride and indignation, not faltering once over her words. Where such strength came from, she did not know. The Duke's brows had furrowed at her words. "Is that all?" he inquired. "Yes, my lord, pardon, your grace." "Very well." That particular day came and went. The wedding plans were made without Cassandra's involvement, and she was thrust into housework. As she wrung out the wash, her hands burning and her body pooling with sweat, Cassandra realized her wedding to Lord Kensington was in the morrow. Tomorrow, she would be a maid no longer. Instead, she would be Lady Kensington, Duchess of Crestwood. Knowing that a different life, even if it was one with a cold, expressionless husband, awaited her, Cassandra could barely sleep as she wrapped the woolen blankets around herself. The fireplace across the room sat dark and empty. There was zero use in lighting it when she would be gone before the dawn. In the early hours of the morning, she was woken by the housekeeper and two maids. They were standing at the foot of her bed, each separately holding a candle, a platter of bread and butter, and a dress. "Come, my lady, we must get you ready," the housekeeper said. Cassandra wiped at a tear that had fallen down her cheek. Only the servants know, her friends treated her as an earl's daughter. She let them dress her in the ivory satin gown her older sister wore to her own wedding, with its layers upon layers of lace and embroidery. Areas that should have hung loosely had been mended and stitched to fit her small frame perfectly. She smoothed her hands over the stiff fabric and tried not to think of her sister laughing in it, glowing at her own wedding while Cassandra had been scrubbing pots in the kitchen. Now it was her turn to wear the gown, not for love nor for pretty words but for her own liberation. The women worked on her hair, twisting and braiding every nut brown strand, pinning their work onto the back of her head. In the meantime, Cassandra ate her last cold meal in this prison of a home. "One final touch, my lady," the housekeeper said, slipping white satin gloves over Cassandra's chapped red hands. "May these hands never see another day of undeserving hardship." She gave Cassandra's hands a gentle squeeze then. Cassandra hugged the women, as they each cried happy tears, and proceeded down many flights of stairs toward an awaiting carriage. The black transport bore a white wolf on its doors, the Kensington family emblem. Cassandra was driven separately from her parents to the chapel, where she was quickly ushered down the aisle by her father, spoke vows she couldn't even recall speaking, and soon found herself back in the very same carriage. This time, she sat across from the Duke as they waved farewell to the small party that was invited to the ceremony. "I had assumed you wished to arrive at Crestwood as soon as possible, so I declined the wedding breakfast with your parents," the Duke said, his eyes remaining on the commotion outside the carriage. "I explained that it will take us 2 days to reach the estate. The earlier we leave, the sooner we are to arrive. And you may use this journey to rest as well." 2 days with a stranger who was now her husband? Cassandra did not know how to feel at present. "Oh. Adam. I beg your pardon." "Adam is my Christian name," the Duke said, leaning back in his seat now and laying his cane across his lap. "If we are to be husband and wife, sharing the intimate space of a home, I prefer we use one another's Christian names when not in the company of others." Cassandra could only nod. She did not feel comfortable calling her husband goodness, she had a husband by his Christian name just yet. Formality still clung to every fiber of her nerves. She noticed the Duke's eyes discreetly gaze her up and down, and Cassandra questioned if she had soot on her face. It had been so dark and cold that morning, she did not know what she looked like. As she wrapped her shawl more tightly around herself, Cassandra couldn't help studying Adam. His strong and sturdy build was draped in a grey heavy coat, which hid his blue jacket and matching trousers. He wore a gold waistcoat, along with a golden watch and chain. And a crisp white linen shirt and cravat crept up to his dark beard. Even behind his beard and mustache, Cassandra could make out a strong jawline. The Duke was rather handsome, and Cassandra could tell by those piercing blue eyes that Lord Kensington was not as old as her father. He was young, regardless of the cane he carried. Their eyes met just then, and Cassandra felt blood immediately surge to her cheeks. She hastily looked out the window. Her intention was not to gawk at her own husband, she was merely comparing him to herself. They drove on in silence some more until Adam commented on her dress. "Thank you. This once belonged to my sister." The words escaped her mouth so suddenly, Cassandra had to bite her lips to keep from speaking further. "That is, with our wedding so sudden, I did not have the time to make one or get it tailored. And seeing that my sister has no need for another marriage, this dress was gifted to me." Cassandra hoped the Duke believed her falsehood. "That is very kind of your sister," he replied. "However, when we arrive at Crestwood, there will be no need for such acts, as the sempstress in town is renowned for her handiwork. You will have dresses made by her very hands." Cassandra nodded in agreement. Her very own dresses. No longer would she need to wear hand-me-downs that never fit. Her heart danced happily, and Cassandra spent the next several silent minutes admiring the scenery around them. She has not known life outside of her parents' estate since the age of 5. "What am I to call you as my wife?" Adam asked. "Wife." He spoke the word so seamlessly. Cassandra looked up at her husband. "HM. I cannot call you Duchess at all hours of the day," he explained. "I wish to use your Christian name." "Sandra, please." She quickly cut him off. "I do not like the sound of my full name." Cassandra couldn't meet his eyes. "Very well, Sandra." Cassandra returned her eyes to the scenery outside, hillsides with wild blossoms and shrubberies that had yet to freeze with the coming winter, even though there was more she wanted to say about her name. When the Duke did not press her for more, she forced herself to speak up. "My grandmother used to call me Sandra. She passed away when I was only 5. Tears suddenly gathered in her eyes, not at the thought of her grandmother but at the life that came after the woman's death. Cassandra's life of servitude began after the older woman, her protector, died. Adam nodded, his face hard to read. "I am sorry for your loss." Cassandra swallowed and shook her head. It was long ago. As she returned to the scenery outside, Cassandra's eyelids suddenly grew heavy, and she let herself drift off. When she jolted awake, rain lashed against the carriage windows, loud enough to rival the bustle outside. Peering out, she spotted Adam in the chaos, soaked to the bone, directing men who were hauling their trunks into an inn. Catching sight of her, he rushed over, water dripping from his dark hair. "I'm terribly sorry to wake you," he called over the storm, his hand outstretched, "but it is impossible to travel in this weather. We shall have to stay the night." Cassandra took his hand, which was warm despite the chill, and stepped into ankle-deep mud. Before she could even wince, Adam yanked his coat off and tossed it over her head and rushed her toward the inn. The smell of pipe smoke, fresh bread, and something faintly sweet, cider, perhaps wafted up her nose. The place was buzzing with travelers laughing over steaming mugs, as if the storm did not exist outside. Their lodgings were separate, but Adam paused at her door. "I will be right next door," he explained. "Should you need anything, just shout." His tone was clipped, not unkind, just practical. She nodded, relief washing over her. Alone at last. Her room was small but cozy, a bed with a quilted cover, a wobbly table with a plate of sliced ham, buttered turnips, and a hunk of brown bread. It was a feast compared to bread and butter or pottage. After devouring the meal, Cassandra climbed into bed. The mattress sighed under her weight, the sheets crisp and cool. The storm raged on, but inside for once she was warm, with a scent she had felt in a long time. In the morning, they continued their journey toward Crestwood. This time, Adam offered her several books and needlework. "In my hurry yesterday, I had forgotten that we may need some entertainment on the road," he said. Cassandra was more than surprised by the offer. Leisurely activities have been a rarity for her thus far. She devoured each leather-bound volume of poetry, philosophy, and Greek mythology, and she even tried her hand at embroidery, which was a failure. They made several more stops in order to allow the horses to rest before finally arriving at Crestwood. The red-bricked mansion was nestled in a forest of trees, oak, birch, hazel, and other wilderness that now danced in an array of reds, yellows, and browns. Cassandra couldn't help pressing her nose up against the carriage window. What she had envisioned to be a dark, uninviting fortress turned out to be a warm and welcoming house. Adam shifted across from her, his cane tapping lightly against the floorboards. "Kent's at its best in autumn," he said, following her gaze. Though the roads turned to sludge by November. Cassandra could not imagine how sludge could ruin such a picturesque landscape. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Beyond the gravel drive, Crestwood's grounds unfolded like a painting, rolling hills wrapped in golden autumn grass sloping toward a thick line of trees that danced in the late afternoon sun. Cassandra even spotted a pond in the distance. She barely noticed when Adam slipped out of the carriage to speak with the housekeeper, too busy counting the chimney stacks poking above the red brick mansion's slate roof. 5, 6, no, 7. Smoke curled lazily from several of them. The whole place looked warm and alive, not the cold fortress she had imagined. Servants darted around, hauling trunks, but their chatter could not be heard as the only sense that seemed heightened was Cassandra's vision. What she was witnessing was not an estate, it was a whole world, and somehow, it was all hers. Adam came to stand beside the carriage, his cane tapping lightly as he offered her his free hand. "Welcome home, Your Grace," he said. There was something softer in his words, not quite warmth but close. Part 2. Adam cleared his throat and the men and women around them quickly formed two lines that ascended toward the entrance of the mansion. It was a maneuver masterfully executed. "The staff of Crestwood are here at your disposal," Adam said to Cassandra, not once meeting her eyes. He placed a hand on her back and guided her toward the house. As they ascended the stone steps, Cassandra was introduced to every member, each of whose name she forgot then and there. They greeted her with a bow or curtsy and called her Your Grace. The name sounded so royal next to My Lady. It was only once they reached the top that Cassandra realized Adam walked with the assistance of his cane, with a slight limp to his steps. Why hadn't she noticed before? The Duke's cane was not an accessory. Adam's thumb brushed her knuckles before he let go. "Mrs. Miller, the housekeeper, will show you to your rooms," he said, nodding toward a tall, thin, and grim-looking woman. "She has been with my family for as long as I can remember." Cassandra quickly learned that her chambers would be in the East Wing, while Adam's were in the West Wing. Before she could inquire on their separate living conditions, the Duke had already turned and strolled off in the opposite direction. A prickle of uncertainty crept up her spine. Has she done something wrong already? Sure, the wedding had been quick, but somewhere along their journey Cassandra thought she sensed the beginning of a bond. Perhaps it was just a one-sided hope. Mrs. Miller's voice snapped her back into the present. "This way, Your Grace," she said. Cassandra trailed behind, stealing one last glance at Adam's retreating figure. His shoulders were rigid, his pace deliberate, yet not once did he look back at her. Perhaps he just needed space, Cassandra told herself. Or maybe, and her stomach twisted into knots, he already regretted this. Once she and Mrs. Miller entered her bedchamber, Cassandra's breath caught. The room was neither grand nor cramped, just right. The walls were papered in yellow, inviting more warmth and color into the room. A red silk bed, piled high with embroidered pillows and blankets, sat in the center, and a fire crackled in the hearth, chasing away any lingering chill. The space seemed designed for a princess, not the invisible daughter of an earl. "His Grace prefers his privacy, and he thought you'd like your own as well," the housekeeper said. "But do not fret, Lord Kensington will be needing his coat back tonight." At the realization that Adam's heavy woolen coat was still wrapped around her body, Cassandra could only blush. Of course. Her shoulders relaxed then. Perhaps there was nothing to worry about between herself and Adam. She spent the rest of the afternoon wandering Crestwood's halls and quickly realized this wasn't just a house to bedazzle guests, it was actually lived in. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, caressing family portraits and furniture, and warming the honey-colored wood floors. There was even a faint scent of fresh bread wafting up from somewhere within the house. All the while, the staff moved about her, bowing and murmuring "Your Grace," which puzzled the new Duchess. The staff did not turn their backs to her nor quicken their steps toward the servant stairs, as if she were something to avoid. The servant stairs. Now curious, Cassandra sought the narrow, hidden stairwells that divided the master from his staff. One set was not hard to locate near the dining hall, and Cassandra descended into a dimly lit corridor. The hum of voices, clinking spoons, and the scraping of chairs pulled her forward. Cassandra soon found herself in the kitchen, which was warm and lively. However, at the sight of her, every sound and motion ceased. And then Mrs. Miller stepped forward. "Your Grace, you should not be down here," she said, a look of surprise on her stern face. "I was only curious," Cassandra explained, plastering a smile on her face. "Do continue working. It's quite pleasant to hear all your voices." Indeed it was. The servant quarters at her parents' estate were expected to be silent. The servants, along with Cassandra, had to whisper in order to communicate with one another. "The kitchen is no place for a duchess, Your Grace," the other woman said, and she began steering Cassandra back the way she had come. But Cassandra wanted to explain that she was not a novice in the kitchen, yet the housekeeper was already assisting her up the narrow, tiny steps. "Lord Kensington has specifically stated that Your Grace is not to enter the kitchen," she said, "as well as the scullery and bath-house." "Why ever not?" Cassandra questioned. Such spaces to her were familiar, if not comforting. "The master's orders." Cassandra was soon back in the foyer. Only this time, she wasn't alone. "Why don't I show you where the library is?" Mrs. Miller insisted. Before she could reply, the other woman began walking in the direction of what could only be the library. A library! Cassandra nearly tripped over her own feet trying to keep up with Mrs. Miller. She lost track of how many corridors they turned, but Cassandra didn't mind. Her imagination was filled with towering shelves, the scent of old paper, and a spot by the fire where she could lose herself for hours. When Mrs. Miller finally pushed open a heavy oak door, Cassandra's breath caught. Sunlight streamed in through tall windows, dust motes dancing between rows and rows of leather-bound books. It was bigger than she dared hope. "His Grace spends most of his time in his study," Mrs. Miller said, "so Your Grace will not be disturbed in here." Cassandra barely heard the housekeeper as she was already drifting toward the nearest shelf, fingertips brushing a spine. "Lord Kensington will not mind my being in here?" she asked, recalling the list of rooms she was forbidden to enter. The housekeeper's face finally softened for the first time today. "This is your home, Your Grace. You may do as you please." As she carefully removed books off their shelves and nestled them around her so she could thoroughly dust the library, Cassandra sensed a presence in the room. All the hairs on her neck and arms stood up, and Cassandra looked over at the library doors, only to find no one there. Perhaps she was just anxious in her new home. Anxiety was an old companion, one Cassandra knew all too well. There was a prickling sense of being watched, with the weight of eyes on her back. It clung to her like the damp chill of her parents' house. Even now, as a duchess, she couldn't shake the feeling. After several more rounds of looking over at the door, Cassandra finally looked up to find Adam peering over at her from the threshold. "A duchess has staff to see to her needs," he said. Cassandra's heart beat fast like that of a bird set free from its cage, yet she did not let it show. Lord Kensington was leaning against the doorframe, his face hard to read, as he examined the room. Cassandra instinctively lowered her head. "Lord Kensington, I was only playing your role as mistress, I am well aware." Adam stepped forward and inspected the other bookcases before turning to face Cassandra once again. "Have you been in here all evening?" he inquired, a tilt to his head and a furrow in his brows. "Mrs. Miller said you did not take tea." As his blue eyes stared intensely into hers, Cassandra suddenly felt small. The Duke was displeased with her actions. It was still the first day of their marriage and already Cassandra disappointed her husband. He may as well return her to her previous life. Yet just the thought of returning a disgrace and being forced back into servitude filled Cassandra with dread. She lowered her eyes to the floor and quickly apologized. "I will put these right back and never enter this space again," she stammered, motioning how she would take the books off the floor and slide them back into their rightful places. Adam caught her hands just then, and Cassandra felt her face burn with embarrassment. She had removed her gloves, in order to handle the books without soiling the protective gear. Her hands were still red and raw. "Mr. Thomas, the gardener, makes an amazing salve," the Duke remarked, studying her hands. "I shall send for some." Cassandra waited for him to ask why her hands, the hands of an earl's daughter, were not soft and gentle, yet inquire he did not. Instead, he only held them firmly. Their wedding happened in a blur, and Cassandra couldn't even remember how he took her hand and slid the wedding band sapphire ring onto her finger. In this moment, however, she could feel the roughness of his big hands, which were twice the size of her own. The touch was rather welcoming, until the image of such hands striking her across the face flashed in Cassandra's mind, and she flinched. Adam noticed her behavior and quickly asked, "Are you ill?" "No, Your Grace." Cassandra shook her head. "I was thinking of a distant memory." "I'm sorry. My mind had wandered." "Do not apologize. It is only natural for our minds to wander." Adam's eyes returned to her hands, and Cassandra thought she noticed his face soften. His thumbs gently caressed her knuckles, and then, in the blink of an eye, he quickly released her. He cleared his throat and said, "Every space in this house is yours, Sandra. You may decorate and rearrange as you please, but do not forget that we have staff to aid you." Cassandra stared at the back of Adam as he retreated from the room. Confusion stirred in her chest at the behavior. What just happened? Then her eyes fell onto the piles of books at her feet. Yes, she could call for help, but she was enjoying her solitude. Was it possible her own husband preferred peace and quiet as well, and that his reclusive life was done by choice? When Cassandra finally retired to her room after supper, she found Adam's coat missing from where she had placed it. Perhaps her husband would not be entering her room that night. Part 3. Her first month at Crestwood passed by quickly and peacefully. Cassandra never knew such serenity before, as she cherished each passing day. However, with Lord Kensington and Mrs. Miller's keen eyes on her whereabouts, Cassandra could not return to a life of constant cleaning, no matter how much her body yearned to help out the staff. Instead, she took to learning the layout of Crestwood and its grounds, getting to know the staff and their roles so she may oversee their work, and she studied the household accounts in order to make informed decisions on expenditures. During her free time, which was still foreign to her, Cassandra read in her closet. It was a private room within her bedroom, with a personal bookcase, a writing desk, and a bay window overlooking the gardens and pond below. The small intimate space reminded the new Duchess of the attic that once served as her only safe space. One particular day, while she was browsing a volume of maps of the world in her sanctuary, Cassandra heard the voices of Lord Kensington and Mrs. Miller on the other side. "I could have sworn Her Grace had come into her chambers," the housekeeper said. "Have you checked the library, sir?" "Yes, and she is not there," said Adam. "The staff below stairs have not seen her either." "Let me check with the stable master." Cassandra could hear a set of footsteps scurry away. She contemplated if she should let her husband know of her hiding place. Would he disturb her only place of solitude if he knew where she was? After a moment of hesitation, she pushed the secret door open and caught sight of the Duke's feet disappearing past the outer door before it shut. "Adam, I'm in here," she called out, shutting the closet door behind herself. Immediately the door to her bedchamber reopened and Lord Kensington's head popped into view. A look of relief washed over him as he pushed the door further ajar, stepping into the room. "I was not aware of your magical talents," he said with a raised brow, a slight curl in the corners of his lips. Over the weeks, Cassandra noticed something shifting in Adam. At first, he had stiff shoulders and used clipped words, like a man guarding a fortress. Yet as time passed, his demeanor began to change. On one of their walks, he paused by the garden to point out the stubborn woodpecker that has yet to migrate south. "I cannot believe I have to listen to that creature for several more weeks," Adam said, as he leaned over ever so closely to Cassandra, their faces almost touching. One evening, she caught him teasing the kitchen tabby cat that would sometimes make an appearance in the dining room. The Duke's cane had been abandoned by his chair, as he and the animal crouched under the table in search of scraps. At the sight of her, Adam jumped, bumping his head on the table. "Do not mind us, Your Grace," he said, rubbing the wound. "Scavenging for food is a bit more tantalizing this evening." And just the previous week he actually laughed when she tripped over a bloody old rug Adam refused to replace. His laughter was so contagious Cassandra found herself laughing alongside him, both wiping tears from their eyes. It was such a relief to see this softer side to the cold, reclusive Duke. Not magic, Your Grace. Just a secret hiding place, Cassandra explained with a tease. He scrutinized her some more from the doorway. Am I not to know of such a place? I would have assumed Your Grace already knew of such a place, for Crestwood is your family home. The look of slight amusement remained on Adam's face. I'm afraid this house is too big for me to explore on my own, he admitted. I have not had the time to explore its many rooms, secret or otherwise. Then explore with me, you may. Cassandra backed into a wall of books and felt for the latch hidden within the shelf. However, you must promise me you will not tell Mrs. Miller nor the others, she said. Adam placed a hand on his heart and nodded. You have my word, dear wife. Wife. Every time Adam used the word, Cassandra's heart did a little dance. She rather enjoyed being called wife. Cassandra pressed at the small latch and the wall behind her popped open. She watched Adam's forehead wrinkle slightly. It was not like the Duke to show much emotion, but Cassandra had learned that the minor changes on his face were big details. At the moment, he was surprised to learn of her secret hiding place. Adam took one step forward and Cassandra reminded him of his promise. This time, she saw his eyes meet the ceiling before looking over at her once more. I promise, he swore again. Feeling triumphant, Cassandra fully extended the door into her closet and stepped to the side. Adam stepped over and stopped at the threshold. His face was full of bewilderment and questions. When did you discover this? He asked, peering inside. The night of our wedding. Cassandra felt her ears burn, recalling what has yet to take place between them. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to rearrange your chamber, and you came upon the secret door. Precisely. Cassandra had grown accustomed to her husband's intuition. Adam stepped within and looked around the room. He seemed to swallow the small room with his towering, broad-shouldered frame. As he took in the space, his eyes fell upon the many books scattered on the writing desk, the bay window, and the floor. I see you've been doing some light reading, he noted, picking a volume from off the floor. It was a copy of Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe. Cassandra's cheeks burned. I admit, my knowledge and education is not vast. On the Guildford estate, I had other obligations to attend to. I see. And is Crestwood filling in the gaps wherever necessary? Adam's expression softened, with something hopeful flickering in his eyes. It was as if he were asking about more than just about books, as if he were wondering if he could be part of what filled in those gaps for Cassandra. Oh, yes. I'm rather enjoying my discoveries thus far. And my duties are, well, I'm still learning and could use more. But Mrs. Miller has been ever so helpful. Indeed, Mrs. Miller is a wonderful housekeeper. Adam's eyes lingered on her, yet he did not speak for some time. When he finally did, Cassandra felt all the blood in her drain to her feet. Sandra, speaking of your duties, I believe it's time we host a ball to introduce you, as the Duchess of Crestwood. A ball, she whispered, her eyes falling to the floor. I don't know how. I'm afraid my dancing is quite lacking as well. That's okay. We can learn, Adam suggested. Together. Cassandra could only imagine herself stepping on her husband's feet as they waltzed around the room. And what of his limp? Won't you tire yourself out? She inquired, peering at his leg. Nonsense. I will do anything for you, my Duchess. Cassandra blushed. She knew the words of the Duke rang true. He had anticipated all her needs before she even asked. The least she could do was agree to a Crestwood ball. Just one ball, she told the Duke. He nodded and returned to admiring her secret hiding place. When he spoke again, he did not meet her eyes. I also have one more request, dear Sandra. Of course. Name it. She watched as Adam swallowed and fidgeted with his cane. Might I, if it's not too imposing, enter your bedchamber tonight? At the last word, he finally gave her what looked like a small guilty look. Again, Cassandra's cheeks burned. Tonight? Her husband has requested they finally consummate their marriage. She had become accustomed to their separate lives. Cassandra didn't think he'd have them remove the divide. Yet, due to Adam's care and change in behavior, a longing had begun to stir in Cassandra's chest. Every time he took her hand or placed his hand on her back, she had hoped the touch would become something more. Every time she felt Adam close the gap between them, possibly even kiss her, he would quickly pull away. The growing intimacy between them flickered like a candle in a draught, warm and bright one moment, then nearly snuffed out the next. Tonight, however, he would avoid her no longer. "Let me think this over," she heard herself say. "Of course, take all the time you need, Sandra. It need not be tonight." She nodded. Adam's visit into her closet came to a premature end, and Cassandra could only scold herself. Why had she asked for more time? She had had time enough. There was nothing for her to think over. That night, as she paced around her chamber and listened to the stillness of the house settle in, Cassandra gathered all her courage like a basket of washing and crept over to the west wing. Having been to the Duke's chambers during instances when she knew he was out of the mansion, Cassandra easily located Adam with one single candle lighting her passage. He was still awake himself, reading by candlelight. At the sight of her, Adam stepped off the bed and hurriedly limped his way over. "Sandra, my love, is everything all right?" he asked, concern on his tired face. She nodded. Although she rehearsed her words prior, in the moment Cassandra felt small and vulnerable and fearful and foolish. "Yes, Your Grace. I've only come to fulfill your second request." Adam's face softened as he took her hands in his. They weren't the same rough, reddened hands she originally brought to Crestwood, no more scrapes from scrubbing floors nor burns from hauling pots. Now her palms were smooth, her fingers soft, and the calluses slowly fading under layers of the gardener's salve. He kissed each hand and murmured, "Are you certain?" "Yes, dear husband." That night, Cassandra learned a dance with the Duke that she would crave many times over. The love and tenderness he showed removed all walls between them, or so she thought. Part 4. "These jewels have been passed down from one Kensington to another," Mrs. Miller said, smiling as she delicately draped a jeweled pendant around Cassandra's neck. "And it suits you very well, Your Grace." Cassandra peered at her reflection. The woman peering back at her was almost unrecognizable, with a rosier complexion, her hair pinned into the latest fashion, and a blue silk gown wrapped perfectly around her body. The family heirloom indeed elevated her appearance for tonight's ball. The invitations were well received, and Crestwood was to see many nobles, friends, and neighbors that night. Cassandra hoped many were coming to gaze upon the Duchess of Crestwood and not the invisible daughter of the Earl of Guildford. Not suddenly formed in her stomach at the realization that her own parents would be in attendance. Cassandra tensed. Perhaps her parents would finally be proud of her accomplishments tonight. Although her hope was that of the tabby cat present but barely noticeable while her nerves were the size of the vast estate. All will be well, Cassandra told herself, for she was no longer that meek, fearful girl. She was now a grown woman, Duchess of her own home. That evening, guests poured into the halls of Crestwood like summer rain flooding a dry riverbed, sudden, eager, and impossible to ignore. The grand entrance shimmered with the rustle of silk and the clink of champagne glasses as lords and ladies swept in, curiosity sharp in their eyes. Everyone came to catch a glimpse of the mysterious Duke and his even more mysterious bride. If anyone was disappointed by the sight, they did not make their judgments known. All was going perfectly, with Cassandra and Adam entertaining their guests, when Lady Grey, the Dowager Countess of Ravenport, commented, "I speak for all of England, Your Grace, when I say I was shocked yet pleased to learn you are the daughter of Lord Victor, the Earl of Guildford. Why is it, my dear, that we have never seen you in public engagements until, well, you stole the heart of the most eligible bachelor in the nation?" The older woman, with her silver hair pinned neatly into place, and draped in a lacy black dress, wore a genuine smile on her aging face, as she asked the one question Cassandra had been fearing since Adam first suggested the ball. Adam, who had his arm hooked around her own, gave the young Duchess's hand a gentle pat. The touch was reassuring and encouraging. However, before Cassandra could utter a sound, her father's thunderous voice boomed nearby. He wasn't just speaking, but rather acting for anyone who would listen to him. "Cassandra, she is so unlike my other children," the Earl snarled. "That girl could never keep her feet on the ground, always traipsing about town. She was more interested in parties and mingling with neighbors than learn the ways of the gentry." Her heart hammered in her chest and Cassandra felt tears prickle in the back of her eyes. However, it was not pain and anguish that swam in her veins but rather anger and hatred. Adam gave her hand a squeeze, having heard the comment as well. "In all honesty, my lady, I am rather not fond of social gatherings. I had been hiding on the Guildford estate, and I had become so masterful at the skill, even my own dear mamma and papa could not find me." Cassandra forced a laugh, and Lady Grey and Adam joined in the amusement. "I would sneak books from my father's library into my room, and I taught myself how to sew and mend, concoct herbal remedies for our tenants and staff, study ledgers, and all other tasks I knew would be needed of me should I ever become mistress of my own home." Memories of completing such tasks in secrecy and in the dead of the night made Cassandra's throat tighten. She looked up at Adam, hoping he'd intuitively come to her aid, and he did. "The Earl is a good friend of mine, and I have dined at Guildford on many occasions. However, it is true that Her Grace was never easy to spot, as she was always tending to the family estate and seeing to the safety and well-being of those who live there. It became clear to me that being a dutiful landlady was more important to her than entertaining guests who only enjoy cards and gossip at the Earl's table. It also became a game of cat and mouse as I sought out her whereabouts during each of my visits to Guildford. Her Grace could be found assisting cook in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes alongside the maids, lending a helping hand in the gardens, and even tending to the sickly on the land. There was and is no task Her Grace cannot handle with her own two hands." At these words, Cassandra felt her chest warm and tears gather in her eyes once more. Adam was not recounting a fictitious tale but rather recalling her horrid life prior to their marriage. The Duke's blue eyes met hers then, full of admiration, as he said, "With each passing visit, each glimpse into Her Grace's hidden world, I fell in love with her. I knew she would make a fine mistress at Crestwood and an even more wonderful wife, in my world." He took her hand and placed a gentle kiss on her knuckles. Around them, applause erupted and someone commented, "Kensington, you lucky bastard found a hidden gem among the rocks." Laughter filled the hall, and Cassandra finally let her tears fall, tears of pure bliss. After the last candle in the ballroom finally blew out and guests either retired to their rooms or retreated, with Cassandra's parents hastily vanishing shortly after the humiliating confession, Cassandra made her way to Adam's chamber. "How is it your feet can be as quiet as a mouse?" Adam teased, undressing himself for the night. "And how is it you have never told me about knowing who I am or was prior to our wedding?" He shrugged. "I did not want to frighten you. I was also afraid you'd reject me." "Why would I reject you, Your Grace?" "Because I'm cold, I live alone. And I'm a crippled." Adam eyed his cane on the bedside. Cassandra strolled up to Adam and began helping him with his buttons. "You are not cold, Your Grace. Your home and staff are the warmest and most welcoming I've ever known. Your walking stick is only an enhancement to your handsome stature," and she met his eyes. "You live alone no more." A boyish grin spread on Adam's lips as he leaned in to kiss her. She pulled away and asked, "Won't you tell me about how you and your cane came to know one another? I fear you have so much knowledge about me, yet I know so little about you." "A carriage accident," Adam admitted, "when I was in my youth. My ankle was crushed and has not been the same since." "Nonsense. I see no difference," Cassandra teased. "All I see is a man who provides for and protects what is his." Adam kissed her once more. "Have you come to humble me or are you here on business affairs?" "Oh, business, of course." Cassandra smirked, looping her arms around Adam's neck. "Wasn't that the deal, strictly business between you and my father?" Adam raised a brow. "After tonight, you still believe so?" He leaned in, his voice dropping. "Tell me, did I negotiate like a man who only wanted a transaction?" She feigned a thoughtful hum. Well, you were very insistent on securing my hand. Almost suspiciously so. Maybe I just have excellent taste. He tugged her closer, grinning. Or maybe I saw you sneaking books from the library and thought, a woman with my same tastes. Cassandra laughed. So you admit it, you were spying on me. Call it a thorough study of your character. His thumb brushed her cheek. I had to make sure you weren't just another entitled miss of the gentry, after my title and wealth. What are the results of your careful studies? Adam's gaze softened. You were better. Infuriatingly elusive, maddeningly kind. He sighed. Drove me mad trying to find excuses to visit your father. Cassandra's brows furrowed. All those dinners, just to catch a glimpse of me scrubbing pots and getting dirty. Worth every agonizing minute. He kissed her, quick and teasing. Even if you did make me work for it. Cassandra laughed. I was not aware of your presence, sir. Adam caught her mouth again, murmuring, now that you do, I expect full compensation for all those wasted dinners. Cassandra pulled back just enough to whisper, name your price, your grace. Her husband grinned. Oh, I plan to, my sweet, sweet Sandra. Part 5. Winter soon thawed into spring, bringing with it a quiet hum of life, budding branches, the first scatter of wildflowers, and the distant chirps of birds returning to nest in Crestwood's trees. Little did Cassandra know that there was still ice beneath the surface she still had to tread upon. It came about late one afternoon, as the Duchess sat in her secret hideout, feeling the light flutters in her stomach. An idea struck her, and she had to bring it to the attention of the Duke. Adam was in his study, a room not too far from the dining hall. He was hunched over several letters, his face hard and concentrated, yet at the sight of her, he smiled and set the correspondences aside. What can I do for you, my love? He inquired, extending a hand. Cassandra crossed to his desk and immediately saw how bloodshot his eyes were. Lines and dark circles sat beneath them as well. Adam, you're tired, she noticed. He shook his head. Perhaps, but only because deadlines are approaching. Nothing new. Is there anything I can help with? Adam took her hands and kissed them. You do enough for Crestwood and myself already. It is you who needs rest. Cassandra smiled. Speaking of which, I was thinking. She paused, allowing the silence to stretch just enough for Adam to become curious. Yes? Instead of sleeping in separate quarters, we should combine our rooms. What should have been a sweet celebratory moment turned sour, as Adam's face darkened like a storm rolling in. Sandra. He hesitated, voice tight. It sounds nice, truly, but I can't. Her stomach dropped. That hollow, forgotten feeling crept back, the one she thought she'd left behind. Why not? The words came out thin and shaky. Adam released her hands then and returned to his papers. Because? We're happy with the way things are. Cassandra's eyes narrowed. There was his coldness again. Why? But we could be happier, she pleaded. And we no longer have to scurry around our own home as if we were rodents in the night. The Duke's gaze flicked up, unreadable. Then I shall come to you. Problem solved. Her jaw clenched. That wasn't the point. I do not wish to live halfway across the house from my own husband, Cassandra snapped. She could see Adam's hands tighten around his missive. Then what, pray tell, do you want? His voice was cold, distant, dismissive even. I have provided you with a home and a place you no longer have to work tirelessly to maintain. What do you want? I've already stated my wish. You know what I want. And I already told you, Sandra, that I cannot do so. Why ever not? Again, Sandra's words came out strong and harsh. She did not like being ignored by his grace. Why was he even avoiding the topic? Just then, Adam rose and slammed his fist on the tabletop. Because I said so. And as master of this house, my words are final. Tears burned in her eyes suddenly, but Cassandra held them back. She learned young that crying would solve nothing. Very well, Your Grace. Her voice was ice as she spun on her heels and retreated from the study. She wanted to slam the door, ached to, but didn't. Instead, she shut it softly. Too softly perhaps. And only once the physical divide came between them did she let her tears fall. The Duke's cold, hard wall, it seemed, had returned. Just as Cassandra turned toward her chambers, the ones assigned her as if she were a guest, shouts erupted down the corridor. Staff darted past, their faces tight with panic. What's the matter? Cassandra grabbed a maid by the arm. Kitchen fire, Your Grace. Stay back. Her chest clenched. The kitchen staff, Mrs. Miller, the cook, the young maids and kitchen boys who made her feel at home in such a vast estate were down there. Without a moment's hesitation, Cassandra ran. Smoke hit her like a wall at the servants' stairs. Coughing, the Duchess pushed forward to find the kitchen in chaos. Flames kissed the range and ceiling, pots and pans were tipped over, and water sloshed about uselessly as staff scrambled to kill the flames. Get out! Now! Cassandra shouted, as she yanked at the scullery maid, who stood paralyzed. In her hurry to save her newfound friends, Cassandra slipped. Her legs gave way under her, and she collapsed onto the burning tiles. The heat pressed in, stealing her breath. She choked and gasped for air as the darkness began to close in at the edges of her vision. Somehow, all the strength in her had vanished, and she suddenly felt weak and helpless. Why now? Just then, 2 hands strong and firm grabbed her and hauled her back onto her feet. Cassandra found herself pressed against Adam as he half-carried her upstairs. He spoke no words to her, although his jaw was tight and his eyes were filled with fear. For her. Everyone was evacuated to the front of the house, and Adam shoved Cassandra toward Mrs. Miller. Keep her safe, he demanded. Before Cassandra could protest, Adam had already turned away, limping faster than she'd ever seen him move. Mrs. Miller tightened her hold on the Duchess, as Cassandra tried to twist free. Adam, wait! You must stay here, Your Grace, Mrs. Miller hissed, her eyes wide with fear. Her heart hammered in her chest as Cassandra watched smoke rise from the kitchen quarters and listened to the distant shouts and commands of Adam and other men. After what felt like a lifetime, Adam finally returned. His face was covered with soot, and his cravat and shirt had been undone and singed in certain areas. He stumbled forward and breathed, Sandra, are you all right? Cassandra rushed to him and threw herself into his arms. You fool, she said into his ruined jacket. I'm only a fool for you, my love, Adam muttered into the top of her head. They remained in one another's arms for some time, longer after the staff returned to their duties. I thought I lost you, Adam murmured into her hair. Cassandra had no words. She had not forgotten the incident in his study. Adam pulled back just enough to look at her. You are right, we need not sleep in separate quarters any longer. What would I do if harm were to ever come your way again? He tugged her close and pressed a kiss to her hair. I'm sorry for my behavior this morning. You did not deserve such treatment. No, the apology is all mine, Cassandra said. I should have known you have your reasons. Yes, but it should not be what comes between us. Adam stared into her eyes. My dear Sandra, please know that I do not push you away because of you. I love you dearly, and you have made me the happiest man in the world. Then why do you do it? Cassandra asked. My own parents did not have a strong marriage. They were cold and distant toward one another. I suppose for a long time I thought such a marriage was normal. But you changed that for me, darling Sandra. You showed me what a true loving marriage looks like. I'm only afraid that, should you discover who I truly am, you may desert me. I would never do such a thing, Cassandra said. I know, but this fear has been an old companion of mine. You see, not only were my father and mother distant toward one another, but they treated me with the same contempt. I learned to show little emotions, to have very little need, in order for them to notice my existence. His eyes seemed to have glazed over, as Adam spoke. Crestwood was such a different house then. However, after my father died and I inherited the land, I wanted it all to change. I wanted Crestwood to feel warm and welcoming to all, so that no one would ever know what it feels like to be unwanted. His eyes met hers then. "Is that why you chose me for a wife?" Cassandra inquired. "Yes. I saw so much of myself in you. And more." He pressed his forehead onto hers. "My dearest Sandra, you are my sense when I stubbornly choose to neglect my own, you are my humanity when life escapes from me, and you have shown me adversity when times are tough, you are my strength when I have none. I cannot imagine my life without you in it, hence we shall combine our chambers into one." Cassandra beamed. "Really? Oh good, for I was starting to question the kind of life our child would have if their father always chose to live on the other side of the house, away from them." She took his hand and pressed it to her belly, as Adam's eyes widened. It was the most expressive he'd been all day. "Are you? Are we?" He could barely speak. Cassandra nodded. "You're going to be a father, Adam." Before she could blink, her vision blurred, as Adam picked her off the ground and swung her around. "We're having a baby," he declared for all to hear. Then he set her back down and kissed her hard. "Lady Kensington, Duchess of Crestwood, you make me the happiest man in the world," he said against her lips. "How I wish I had known of your existence sooner." "Perhaps you could have saved me sooner," Cassandra teased. "How can that be possible, my Duchess, when it was you who saved me?" He kissed her once more. "You have taught me so much about humanity. I'm afraid I will need your consistent guidance when it comes to raising our child and being a good husband. You need only ask, Your Grace. And promise me you will never shut down my suggestions again, for you only have my best interest at heart." "Precisely. I promise." In the summer, Crestwood welcomed the birth of a healthy baby girl. She had her father's dark hair, her mother's small nose and fair skin, and her father's stubborn ways. Her cries and wails were a constant that could be heard throughout the estate. The new parents often teased that should they move their daughter into the East Wing, her cries would still wake them in the night. They loved her regardless and made sure the baby girl would never know a day where she was not unconditionally loved. As Cassandra read to her daughter in her secret hiding place, she couldn't help thinking about how her life had taken such a drastic turn in just 1 year. She had grown from a quiet, fragile and invisible earl's daughter to a strong-willed, competent duchess. All because one man's curiosity led him to discovering her true identity and falling in love with her. And in return, she learned to love that cold, reclusive duke and change him for the better. Thank you for listening to Wed a Duke by Lysa Shimkus. Subscribe for more.